This is a video, just a short one I wanted to make in appreciation of a friend of mine named Tom DeWeese, who's doing a project called American Policy Center. It's americanpolicy.org, O-R-G. I would encourage everyone to go there and learn about all the work that he's been doing for many years on Agenda 21 and trying to save your private property rights and avoid us all going into world tyranny through Agenda 21 programs. Very important subject to be aware of. And I'm making the video because, as I think he knows, I totally support everything that he's doing. It's incredible work, and he needs a lot more financial and physical support, as much as people can give him. And we'll keep promoting that. But I also wanted to say that there's another angle to it that I find sometimes hard to communicate, and that is that a lot of the people that understand about the property rights issue don't understand that there's also an ecological, environmental issue, and it's real, it's not fake. And the reason that's hard to understand, I think, for one thing, is that same Agenda 21 crowd or rulers that are pushing the campaign to take away all your, not only property rights, but all your other rights, which in America, it's recognized in the founding documents that those come from God. They don't come from government or the UN or anybody like that. That same group that's trying to take away property rights is trying to use environment as a complete fraud and say that to save the earth from global warming or climate change or whatever you like to use as your favorite term there for pending environmental weather catastrophe, because of that, you really have to give up all your rights. I mean, you really do anyway because of all the Agenda 21 elements, but especially with climate change and especially with global warming, you have to give them up even faster. And that's complete criminal fraud. But on a deeper level, it doesn't mean that there's no environmental crisis. That doesn't follow. They can both be true, and they are both true. So the one that's being pushed in that stop turning on your heat or your air conditioning and stop driving your car, RV or anything because of climate change, that's malicious fraud. Although a lot of people enforcing it that I've met don't even understand that. They're just so superficial thinking. They think of save the earth, and now they know the earth is going to be, life on earth is going to be over in 11 years. It was 12, I think it's 11 now. Because we're not giving money to the climate exchange, carbon exchange businesses, and stopping using energy and becoming totally, enslaved. That's not going to stop climate change, okay? Climate's changing all the time, but man-made climate change, in terms of it being disrupted and weaponized, that's real, okay? But it's not because you're using your air conditioner or you're driving your RV or anything. It's because there's a very sophisticated global level spray program of it originated a long time ago with what they call cloud seeding, to make water precipitate out of clouds. It is so far beyond that now, there's no comparison. That I watched on radar for months and months when I was a co-host on Geoengineering Watch Radio, and some years back, about 5 years ago. And we saw the normal storms coming in off the coast of California to do the normal rain, because in California the normal weather is it rains all winter and it's a drought all summer, and it deposits all the snow in the Sierra, and that waters the Central Valley and the rest of the state during the summer. It's a beautiful natural system. Well, that's been destroyed to a large extent by geoengineering. Now, if that isn't man-made climate change, I was going to say I don't know what is, but I do know what is, and that's it. And it's really powerful, and it's very pernicious and malicious. And it's still going on. They're causing droughts and floods, and they know how to manipulate weather with a combination of spraying particulate matter into the atmosphere and then hitting it with EMF from NexRad and HARP systems and things like that. And most of the public would not be able to imagine it, but it's absolutely true. It's going on. It's right now happening. It's a threat to all life on Earth. That is man-made climate change. That's exactly what it's intended to be. It also has the side benefit to them of making sure that you're so upset about climate change, which they're making sure is real and you can see it, because it causes violent switches in weather that don't otherwise occur. Because you can see it and they've made it obvious that it's real, now you'll be terrified of climate change and be willing to be a slave. So, do you see what I'm trying to say here? It's more sophisticated than just the so-called progressives and liberals saying, well, climate change is going to kill us immediately, and the conservatives saying, oh, climate change is a fraud. These are not accurate points of view, okay? Man-made climate change from you driving your car and turning on your air conditioner is a hoax to make you a slave. And there's a lot of well-meaning people enforcing it. But man-made climate change in the geoengineering is absolutely real. It's an immediate threat. It's very serious. And to say that climate change, man-made climate change is all a fraud is not informed point of view. And even if all you care about is property rights and overturning Agenda 21, you're much more informed and powerful if you know the bigger picture and can fit them together. People can understand if you explain it. This is not going to ruin the program. So that and what they're spraying in the atmosphere is not just ruining the normal climate patterns, which it is. It's also toxic metals and bioweapons and chemical ingredients that are really bad for you and for all different life forms on the planet. So it's poisoning the air and the water and the soil. This is very serious. Somebody is doing a chemical and biological air raid every day over our country, and no one cares, apparently. Well, some people care, but they don't know what to do about it, which I understand. So that's number one. That man-made climate change, absolutely real. It's not a partisan issue. It's like, can you tilt your head 30 degrees, look in the sky, and see what you're looking at and understand it? And you are able to do that. Number two, chemical agriculture is an ecological disaster. It's not necessary, it never has been, to feed the planet. I've been involved in organic agriculture since decades before the National Organic Program. And you can grow food much better in much better quantity and especially in much better quality without any chemical fertilizers and certainly without pesticides. Rachel Carson was not an idiot. She was right. She was understating the problem. And she was made fun of by a lot of people who called themselves conservative and some other ones. And what we have to do here is drop the labels. The conservative liberal thing is a distraction. We should just be interested in whatever is true. And real science says, look, I'm not here to prove my point and that I'm brilliant and you're an idiot. I'm here to find out with you what is true. That's the kind of debate or discussion that's worthwhile. The kind that typically happens where you just want to manipulate things to show that the other person is an idiot and they're wrong. That's just a stupid waste of time, and we don't have a lot of time to throw away right now. Things are really critical. And yeah, part of that is property rights and Agenda 21, and part of it, just as important or at least as important, is the environmental crisis. Absolutely real. Toxic agriculture. This is a long subject and I'm not going to keep you on too long here, but chemical fertilizer unbalances the ecological universe in the soil and makes the plants unhealthy and unbalanced in their own nutrition, which brings in the destructive effect of insects and disease that otherwise would encounter the natural immunity of the plant systems. Okay, if you decode that sentence, that's why chemical agriculture is horrible. And no, it's not required to feed the world, and it's playing a big part in making the world sick. That's an environmental emergency right in itself, and it's absolutely real. There are many others. Nuclear power is an environmental catastrophe waiting to happen. Mankind should have learned from Fukushima event, but the rulers in charge, that's right in line with what they want anyway. Total catastrophe, that's right up their alley. And it's just a question of time with nuclear power. It will happen. And to not be shutting it down right at the moment is a big mistake. Likewise, there are clean and free energy sources as Dr. Stephen Greer and others have discussed, and some have demonstrated before they were assassinated, that need to be brought in right now. Just complacently relying on oil, coal, nuclear, and other things like that is not intelligent, certainly for the leaders or for anybody who considers themselves really informed on this kind of stuff. All the internal combustion engines can run on pure water. And if you can't look at that and at least consider it, you're not going to be able to absorb what I'm saying right now. It'll have to be later. But this is a reality right now. The real energy policy of this country for a long time, and most of the world, has been, do not let the public know about the real energy sources that are available. They're not wind and solar, they're way better. They're based on magnetic and zero-point energies, and the people who even talk too much about them tend to just commit suicide, like shooting themselves several times in the back and jumping in a river. Typical favorite means like that, which I'm not planning to do, by the way. I'm just trying to let you know this is not an argument, you know. This is not a discussion to prove who's right. And, oh, our movement's the best, or... Guys, we got to get beyond kindergarten. This is our challenge, to find out the bigger context of things. If you understand the real environmental crises, which are serious, and EMF is another environmental crisis that's a direct threat to the health of every living organism on the planet, including bacteria. If you don't think that's a serious emergency, you're totally out to lunch in hypnosis. That is a serious emergency, okay? The only more serious one is if we're already dead. And actually that's less serious, because if you're already dead, you don't have to worry about it. So there is many environmental emergencies, and we're not idiot, people to think that that's true. That is true, just not the way we're being told. So a lot of people in movements, freedom movements and other movements, say, well, the public's just not ready to understand this stuff. No, the public has to be ready to understand this stuff, at least a certain percentage of them, because that gives us a chance to change it, you see. And if each issue gets totally tied up, like my friends over at OCA, Organic Consumers Association, Ronnie Coleman and the other great people, I've had them on the show, and they think the Green New Deal is great because all that matters is that agriculture and food become organic. It's going to be great. They're just on that one issue. They don't understand why, to really make the most of even that one issue, you must relate it to the other issues, which are just as real. One of which is the whole issue of economics and their banking and other things like that. A lot of other things. Geoengineering. That OCA is really into warning everybody about global warming and climate change. But they won't look at geoengineering, the #1 cause of global warming and climate change. Okay? That's a big mistake. And yet it becomes an ego thing. Like, oh, we can't question our whole policy. We got millions of dollars moving and we're indoctrinating all these little kids to argue for give up your rights for climate change and do the Green New Deal. So how can we stop in the middle? Guys, what matters is what's true. And the other thing wrong with Green New Deal is that it's going to force everybody into government regulated and controlled healthcare, which is a big joke to call that healthcare. That's like the ultimate forced vaccination and forced medical drugging and forced chemotherapy and no access to the real medicine, which never hurts anybody. Okay, Hippocrates was a lot smarter than the people running the programs now, and he said, if you want to be in the medical industry or the real medical industry or a doctor or some kind of healthcare person, first thing you have to do, this should be really easy, just don't hurt anybody, do no harm. Well, the current medical industry is the opposite. Hurt everybody, get everybody addicted to multiple medical drugs that they don't even know what the combined toxicity is. They know it's synergistic and multiplied. They're doing massive damage. In America, they kill more than 1 million people a year. There's a great article on that called Death by Medicine you might want to look up by I'll remember it. Gary Null and Carolyn Dean, both doctors, one a PhD and one an MD. And this is malicious insanity at the top, and just complacent insanity down below, where we just obey without thinking. So I guess my message is to bring it down. This is such a big subject, we could go on for hours and not touch it enough. But the message is that Agenda 21 and property rights is a very serious issue for everybody. It doesn't matter if you think you're a progressive or a communist or whatever. If you lose your property rights, you lose your freedom. Tom DeWeese is explaining that better than almost anybody. Everyone should support American Policy Center. But what I want to go with that is, look, don't feel that acknowledging the real environmental crisis is going to somehow distract from the focus on property rights. It's not at all. It's going to make it much stronger. Because if you think that only by having tunnel vision you're going to get your particular thing done, that's not true. If people see that you understand the context and the bigger picture, they will support it even more, and you'll get people from all sides of the so-called political spectrum. Whereas if you only want the property rights people that think there's nothing to the environmental crisis, you're losing millions of people that could be great supporters. We need to have the real understanding of common interests, because we're all humans, and so fighting over all these things is really stupid. It shows that we are so attached to our little twist on things that we won't look at the whole picture. That's a fatal mistake, because not only is there an environmental crisis, there are many crises right now, many emergencies. Humanity and life on Earth is hanging by a thread in many ways. That's the truth. And to not be strong enough or willing to look at it or think it's going to dilute our efforts, we're missing our potential. That's my message. Go to AmericanPolicy.org, support them, and please try to understand this bigger perspective that I'm trying to share with you. It's not for an ulterior motive except to give us a chance to make this work. I don't want to win the property rights battle, or the organic farming battle like OCA is doing, or something else, and lose the war because we thought we would only be able to focus on one thing. Let's not make that mistake, okay? Let me know what you think. Richard@lostartsradio.com, and I'll see you next time.